Hi guys, and welcome back to the Big Sew Along. I'm Ginny, and as always, I thank you very much for choosing to spend a little time with me. This week, I have a quick little tutorial for you as requested by Faith. I will show you how I added pockets to my Eve trousers from Merchant & Mills, and also I will show you how to add a facing instead of a waistband on those. Before I get to that, last week, I had a couple of people ask me what this skirt was. Some people asked if it was a skirt or pants. It is actually a skirt. That is a ready-to-wear skirt that I bought several years ago. I have it in my hands here. It's by a company called Beaus Jours. Like I said, I purchased this several years ago, but I will link to a couple of places that have some of the Beaus Jours items available right now, so you can take a look and see what they have. However, I discovered that just recently Style Arc came up with a new skirt, and I believe it's called, hang on one second, called the Ayla skirt. A-Y-L-A, I think is how it's spelled. It is a little different than this skirt, but it's very, very similar. In addition, you could get a similar look from the A-line midi skirt pattern from the assembly line. It is not as full in the body as the one I have, but you could easily adjust that to make it a little more full. It does have the elastic at the bottom instead of the lantern shape. But either one of those patterns is pretty close to the one that I have, and I just thought I would share that with you guys. Okay, now I have a couple of other things to talk about, but let's get to this tutorial first. First thing is I did this tutorial on some scrap fabric, so I'm not finishing any of my edges and I'm not doing any understitching or anything like that. I'm strictly doing it to show you guys how to do the pocket and the waistband, so ignore everything else. Okay, here we go. Okay, so to draft our pocket, we're going to start with this. This is our front pattern, our front pant pattern piece. And you can see I have my seam allowances drawn out here. And I am going to measure over from the side, from the seam allowance. I'm going to measure over, you can decide, 1 inch to 1.5 inches over. I'm going to make mine 1.5 inches. I'm going to put a mark right here. I want my pocket to be approximately 7 inches, the opening to be about 7 inches. So I'm going to measure from that mark I just made to 7 inches down, which is right here. Now I'm going to draw a line from here, from the bottom all the way to the top. And this, at the top, it can go straight through the seam allowance. Like that. You don't want the bottom to go through the seam allowance though. Okay. Then we're going to measure over from this line and this mark that we just made, this one right here. Measure over about 3 inches. It can be a little wider or a little narrower. I'm going to, maybe let's go 3.5 inches. And that's going to be the side of our pocket. We want this to be a straight line, so make sure you have your grain line marked somewhere on your pattern, and you're going to use that for reference. And we're going to make this about 11 inches long from the top of the seam allowance, from the bottom of the seam allowance, sorry. So it's going to go to about here. And then you're just going to continue that line right through your seam allowance. So it goes all the way up, like that. On the side, we're just going to make it straight across. Again, make sure I'm not being very careful to make sure my lines are straight, but make sure you're at a right angle here. And go all the way right through the seam allowance. Now, for the pocket, we don't need to add a seam allowance here or a seam allowance here because we already have that. We don't have a seam allowance right here yet though. So let's add that. Our seam allowance here is 5/8 of an inch. So it's going to be right there. Now, the rest of this pocket you can leave as is. I prefer to have a rounded corner. So I'm just going to take my curvy tool and curve that out. just like that. And now I need to add a seam allowance to this whole outer edge here. Just like that. Now the other thing I'm going to do is right here where the pocket meets the seam allowance here on the side. I'm going to make a little mark because I'm going to want to make a notch there eventually. So you're going to need a notch there. Now we're going to trace this out twice. The first time I'm going to trace this out and make sure you're tracing your cut lines, not your seam lines. Across the top here, you can see there's a dart. We're going to completely ignore that, and we're just going to make this straight across the top. The dart is not going to affect our pocket at all. Oops. See, I just traced out my seam line and not my cutting line. Cutting line is right there. Okay, before we take this off, we're going to make a couple more marks. We're going to mark that notch right here at the bottom of the pocket. And we're also going to transfer our grain line. Okay, now you're going to need to cut 2 of those. Those are our pocket linings. And then we're going to trace this. Oops. Paper might not be quite big enough. We're going to trace out this one. Again, we're going to go straight across the top. We're not going to worry about that dart. Only this time we're going to go all the way over to the edge and straight down here. And again, mark your notch and your grain line. Obviously not being very careful on this one because I've already done it, but this is the, I guess it's called the bag or the back. Let's call it the back. Okay, so we're going to need 2 of those as well. Now, to cut the front of your pant, you're going to need to eliminate this little piece right here. That's where this is going to sit and take up that space. So we're going to need a seam allowance on our front pant. So I'm just going to fold this on this cut line here. You can cut this off, but we're going to need this piece here for our waistband in a minute. So your front should now look like that. And then it'll sit like this when you're done. It looks like I might be a little off on my drawing, but that's okay. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and cut out our pants. Your front is going to look like this, and you're going to cut out 2 pockets and 2 pocket backs. Okay, so putting your pocket in is pretty standard, but because you don't have all the marks that you would have on a manufactured pattern, I'm going to show you a couple of things. We're going to put the pocket lining right along the side here, and we're going to pin it in place. And then you're going to sew this down. Sorry, got in the way there. You're going to sew this down with your 5/8 inch seam allowance. You're going to start at the top, and you're going to stop sewing at the notch we made. So only sew to here, which will be like right there. Okay? Once you have your pocket lining sewn in, you can see where I stopped right here. you're going to snip through both pieces of fabric, and you're going to snip right up to that stitch line, like that. And you're going to go ahead and do your pressing and your understitching and whatnot. And then when you're done, this will fold back to the wrong side. And this little piece we just snipped will stick out to the side like this. Like that. And then you're going to go ahead and finish assembling your pocket just like you normally would. So this piece is going to get sewn to the back of your pocket. You're going to baste this side down, and you're going to baste across the top. And then we will come back and work on our waistband. Okay, for our facings, we are going to do this. We are going to establish how deep you want your facings. I think mine were 2.5 inches. But they can be as long as you want them. Remember, you have a 5/8 inch seam allowance at the top here. This is my front piece. And to make this, I'm going to start right here. I don't need a seam allowance at the front of my facing. So I'm going to trace this off at the seam line for my facing. Like that. Then I'm going to trace straight across the top. I'm going to include that dart. And I'm going to go all the way over to the side. Ignore what you cut off for your pocket because you need it to go all the way over to the side. And then we're going to come down this way. Now, before we remove our paper, we're going to draw out our dart. And we're going to put a mark here so we know that this is getting cut on the fold, and that is the center front. Now we can establish how long we want this, but I'm going to do something else first. I'm going to go ahead and cut this off. I know this is my front, so that's fine. I'm going to cut my dart out. Completely remove that dart. And then I'm going to tape those together. And now I'm just going to figure out how long I want this to be. And I'm going to make mine 2.5 inches, which is right here. That means it'll be, yeah, that's plenty. And now I can go ahead and finish cutting this out. And be sure you mark this so you know. I'm going to cut one of these on the fold. And now we have to do the exact same thing on the back piece. This is our center back, so we want to make sure we are not including our seam allowance. And then we're just going to trace this out. We are again going to include our dart. Oops, I didn't do a very good job there. And let's see, I'm going to do it this way this time. 2.5 inches. We're not even going to worry about measuring out the dart because it's going to get cut out. Right like that. So let's go ahead and cut that out. I'm going to mark this before I forget. I'm going to remove the dart again and tape those together. You can see mine has a little bit of a point here. That's totally fine. Just trim it off, make it look smooth, like that. So let's give this a little test. Let's fold our dart together. And open that up. And that is the center back right here. That goes on this line right here, and that is going to fit just fine. All right, so let's cut these out. Okay, so here we have our pants, which are, for me, a really weird looking pair of shorts. And we are going to go ahead and put our waistband on. Yours will obviously have interfacing on it, and you will also have finished the edge here. There's nothing unusual or different about this. I just thought I would show you a quick tip. I'm using an invisible zipper here. So you're just going to stitch it, you're going to pin it down all the way as you normally would. And on both, it's easier for me to show you on the back side, but you're going to do this on both sides. You're going to lay your zipper out like this, and you're pinning all the way to the end. However, you want your zipper tape to lay out this way, but you want to fold the top of your zipper towards the zipper tape. I hope you can see that. Sometimes, if you can't get it to, if you can't pin it in place, or if it rolls out of your way, you can use just a little thread tack and hold it in place. I hope that makes sense. So you're folding that back on itself. And I will show you why in just 1 second. You're going to do that on both, on the front and the back, obviously. All right, let me go sew that down and then I'll show you that. Okay, so once we have the waistband sewn on, and again, apologies for my not great stitching, but this is just for demonstration purposes, it's fine. Okay, so once you get the waistband sewn on around the waist, I go back through here and down this way, and you can start up here, it doesn't matter, as long as it goes over your waistline stitching. I just use a narrow zipper foot, or a narrow foot or a regular zipper foot to stitch this edge down here, and I do that on both sides. Then we're going to clip this down. You'll do all your other trimming and finishing and everything. But you'll see when we turn these to the right side, and obviously they're going to need a press and everything. When you roll that end in, you end up with something that looks like this at the top. I hope you're going to be able to see that, where the top really just disappears right into the edge of the fabric. So it sort of curves in like that and makes for a really nice finish. Okay, that's really it, you guys. The only other thing you're going to want to do is add a hook and eye to the back here, right behind your zipper there. And you're all set. Alright guys, there you go. I hope you found that helpful and informative. Please let me know if you have any additional questions. I'm happy to answer them. Aside from that, this week I recently found a store called Melanated Fabrics, in case none of you have heard of them. They had some, if you like graphics, you will love their store. They had a ton of really good things. I have a couple of other new fabric stores, new to me fabric stores to share with you guys, but I'll do that in next week or something. Anyways, from Melanated, I found this really amazing, exactly what I was looking for, which is a graphic print sort of, what would you call that, graffiti kind of print sweatshirt fleece. It is very fleecy on the back. I got this fabric to make Butterick 6863. I'll put a picture of it right here. This is a Catherine Tilton sweatshirt hoodie fleece thing with a zip up the front. I'll show you pictures of the line drawings here. This looks pretty darn simple for a Tilton pattern, which is unusual for those ladies. So I think that's what I'm going to be working on for this week. I'm really excited about that. Yeah, check out Melanated Fabrics if you haven't already. And that's it for me this week, you guys. Until next week, I wish you happy sewing.